Great. Thank you. So let's go ahead and begin for the Ventura County Climate Emergency Council regular meeting scheduled today for Tuesday, May 17, 2022. We're starting a little late. I think it's about 12:15, and we'll be conducting this meeting via Zoom and telephonically. And so we do have a roll call, please. So Clay, would you go ahead and do that?
Councilmember White is not present. Councilmember Ferris.
Here.
Chair Schnapp.
Here.
Councilmember Kessley.
Here.
Councilmember Ramirez is not present. Councilmember Garola is not present. And then Councilmember Vice Chair Chavez.
Here.
And Councilmember Baldwin.
Here.
With that, we have a quorum. We can proceed.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item number 3, Pledge of Allegiance. And Vice Chair Chavez, would you do us the pleasure of leading us through the pledge?
Certainly, Madam Chair, if you're able to, if you can please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice
for all.
Okay, thank you so much. So let's move on to the approval of the minutes from our April 19th BCCEC meeting.
Chavez will move.
Okay,
Second.
all right, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussions? All right, so let's go ahead and have the roll call, please.
Just one moment. Sorry, I'm getting my notes in order on my side to make sure
That's okay.
I copy everything down. Councilmember Ferris.
Yes.
Chair Schnapp.
Yes.
Councilmember Kessley.
Yes.
Councilmember Chavez.
Aye.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, great, thank you. And then let's move on to item number 5, and that's the comments, public comments for items not on the agenda. And so we do reserve that time here at the beginning of the meeting. So if anybody would like to speak on items not on the agenda, you can do so by raising your hand and or taking yourself off of mute. So looking at the screen, I don't necessarily see anybody that wants to speak on at this time on the agenda.
Staff does not see anyone in the gallery. Staff has also not received any correspondence on items not related to the items on the agenda.
Okay, all right. So then let's go into then the item that we have here called Correspondence Agenda. And so these are items presented to this body for our information. They don't require action. And so we didn't receive any for this last month. Clay, do you have anything else to add on this?
No, there's nothing additional right now, although I believe one of the board members had sent me an email sometime after one of the board members' offices had sent me an email and asked me to distribute it shortly after the agenda packet went out. So that's going to come around to your council and it'll appear on the next correspondence agenda. So I'll make sure that the public can see those sorts of correspondences that go to the council as well.
Okay, great, thank you. So let's step into our regular agenda, and we have item number 6, and it's the resolution authorizing remote teleconference meetings of this body for a 30-day period, and it's pursuant to Government Code Section 54953 Subdivision E of the Ralph M. Brown Act. So yes, so we have a question, Vice Chair Chavez.
Yes, Madam Chair, just a question. I know a lot of the, and this is for our staff, a lot of boards have already begun to return back to in-person meetings. I know for the Oxnard Planning Commission, all of our commissioners were told that they must attend the meetings in person now that essentially everything is opening up. So I'm curious as to where this council will lie, or how far does the AB 361 cover before we're essentially forced to return back to in-person, or that we're required to publish our locations for the public.
This time, the authorization for us to continue remote meetings is still authorized as long as we use these subsequent or resolutions that occur for every 30-day period. So we aren't required to return to in-person, although this council does have that ability if it chooses to do so.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments or questions about item 6? And so as it's on the agenda, we can ask if there's any public input at this point because it's on the agenda. So anybody from the public who would like to weigh in on this item, take yourself off the mute or raise your hand. Okay, so I don't see anyone. So let's go ahead and see if there's anyone who would like to move this item.
I'll move approval.
Okay, thank
Have a
you.
second.
And okay, so we have a motion and a second. So let's go ahead and have a roll call.
Councilmember Ferris,
Yes.
Chair Schnapp,
Yes.
Councilmember Kesley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chavez,
Aye.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Let's go on to item number 7 then, the update from County Executive Office staff. So, Clyde, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So this one's a relatively short one. The only real tangible thing that I wanted to share is that we do have on the tentative agenda with the Resource Management Agency's Planning Commission, the proposals that your council approved back in March. And so those are tentatively scheduled to occur on June 16th. And so at that time, staff is planning on presenting on behalf of this council, and it'll be both the proposals associated with education that was brought forward by Councilmember Baldwin, as well as the proposal related to the capping of oil and gas wells, or a resolution for encouraging the capping of oil and gas wells that came out of the other issues TAC. So both of those that were approved by this council in March are the two things that we have planned for June 16th. And that's tentative. So the agendas, when they come out and are made public, that's when they are the agenda. That's when they're going to happen. That's when they're a public document. But the Resource Management Agency's Planning Division does send out a tentative agenda regularly so that folks can see what's kind of in the pipeline.
And
that's
what
all.
is that? What time is that meeting taking place on the 16th?
This is off the top of my head, so it's not official, but I believe that it starts at 8:30 in the morning, and then it depends on the actual agenda item. And to the best of my knowledge, there's nothing else on the agenda for that day, although the planning division does like to try and lump things together, so they're not having the planning commissioners come in every single week, but they can have a tangible agenda. So there could be other things added to it in between now and then.
And are the meetings in person or are there Zoom options?
I do not know the answer to that question, but I'm happy to look it up if your group would like to know that.
Yeah, I see Maggie nodding her head. Yeah.
Okay, I can come back with that. We can figure that out.
Okay, super.
And I'll send that around as an email so you don't have to wait a month to learn that. So
That's exciting news. Any questions for staff? No? Anything else, Clay?
I don't think that's it. The only other thing that you'll see is you will see if anyone has been going to the Climate Emergency Council's website recently, that is actually a temporary website. And so that's going to be changed. We're due to publish the kind of new and updated sustainability division website. And so you'll see that transition over from what it looks like right now into one that is just part of the overall sustainability division website. And that should be anytime. So it should be published shortly. And so that'll look different, but for all intents and purposes, the information will be relatively the same.
Okay,
And that's it for my update.
all right, thanks. So are there any questions? Any questions from the public? All right, seeing none, then let's go ahead and move on to item number 8. And these are updates from the temporary advisory committees. We've reserved a little bit of time here. Any of the techs would like to report?
Madam
So
Chair,
yeah, go ahead.
I'll
Vice
just
Chair.
say that there is nothing from the transportation TAC. I still need to meet with Dick and Clay to try to plan for our next one. If there's still tax, but at this time, there's no updates from transportation.
Okay. Thank you. I could report from the ag tax. So we had a great discussion with Clay. That was Keith and I. And we've set some things in motion that we'd like to accomplish in the next couple of months. So great discussion overall, and really taking a look at what are best practices that are out there that we could help incorporate. Some of it may move into the communications and public relations and education role that Councilmember Baldwin had a few months ago that was presented and moved by this group. So some of it fits there, but I think that there's still many things for us to learn and accomplish. So we're really excited about some of the things that we're going to be moving forward into. Anyone else?
There is no one here from the other issues TAC at this
Yeah.
time.
Okay, that's true. All right, thank you. Any comments from the public on the tax or anything that was reported so far? Okay, seeing none, then let's go ahead and any other discussions from the council members here on this call about tax at this point? No? Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 9, and that's the discussion and taking action on the existing and new temporary advisory committees. And
Madam Chair.
possibly consideration, dissolution, formation, changes in work areas, or changes in membership. We've reserved about 45 minutes.
Madam
Yes,
I'm sorry. I think you're looking at an old agenda. We actually have Gold Coast Transit item.
you're right. Sorry about that. Thank you so much. All
And
right.
I wanted to start off and just ask, as we present the information, I wanted to give a quick where this came from, and then hand it off to the transportation TAC members for comments. And then obviously we have a couple of folks from the Gold Coast Transit District and see if they wanted to make comments. But it's not intended to be a full presentation. This is a relatively, I don't know if impromptu is the right word. I'll let Dick or I'll let council members Baldwin or Chavez decide whether or not it's impromptu. But it was brought to our attention that Gold Coast Transit District was interested in having a letter of support associated with a grant application they have coming up. They reached out to both the Sustainability Division staff as well as the Transportation TAC, because we had gone over, done a facilities tour, which we were very appreciative of, and had a good, really fantastic conversation with them a few months ago. And so it was very appreciated for us to be able to do that. Now, one of the things as staff is this council is intended as an advisory group to the Board of Supervisors. And so it seemed like it wouldn't be consistent with the direction from the board for this group to create its own letter of support for an outside agency or entity. But staff looked at the request, looked at the climate action plan. It seems very consistent with their asking for with the goals associated with the climate action plan. So it is a relatively common practice for us to write letters of support for things of this sort anyway. And so my suggestion was that staff go ahead and write the letter of support that is included in your agenda packet, which we would typically write. And then in addition to that, give this Climate Emergency Council an opportunity to be part of that submission. And if you choose to do so. And so that was my take on being able to involve that. And I think that honestly, having a letter of support from a partner agency is a great thing, but also having a community voice be able to be part of it, like this Climate Emergency Council, seemed like that if your council chooses to do so, that would add weight to that. And like I said before, we did have a really great conversation with Gold Coast Transit District during a transportation TAC visit a few months ago. And with that, I wanted to hand it off to council members Baldwin and Chavez before we hand it off to Gold Coast Transit District, see if they have any comments.
I have lots of comments. I don't know if Daniel wants to pipe in first or let me go.
Go ahead, Councilman.
All right, so this will take a few minutes. One thing I'd like everybody to keep in mind is that when we're reducing emissions from large vehicles like buses, you're also controlling ozone. And so way back in 1993, I came up with an offer of $300,000 to give to SCAT at the time, South Coast Area Transit. And the gas company joined me for $150,000 to pay for the cost of a CNG, compressed natural gas fueling facility at the old bus facility. And this was done for ozone purposes and reducing particulate matter and diesel toxic emissions. They went ahead and did it, and I convinced the SCAT board to take the money and switch. They did. But to my knowledge, SCAT became the first transit agency in California to be 100% CNG back at that time, and it started in '93. Moving on, about 5 years ago, as climate change is working its way around, but long before we became created, the council here, I got interested in trying to convince Gold Coast to switch fuel from CNG to battery, or we call it zero emission bus in my technology, or battery or hydrogen. And well, that didn't go so good because they didn't do it, at least not on my schedule. But now we went and visited them. Daniel and I met with them some months ago, probably at least 6 months ago. Had a great tour. They talked about what they're looking at in hydrogen. And it sounded really good to me. And then all of a sudden we get this email saying that they'd like our support. They want to move forward with the grant. And it takes me back to 1993 when we were moving from diesel to CNG, and now they're moving from CNG to hydrogen, which is, I use a really technical term at the time when I responded. I said, it's awesome. What they're proposing, just like going from diesel to CNG, to making the transition to a fueling facility for hydrogen to move the fleet forward. And I think that this is the beginning of a super clean fleet. Keep in mind that while this is going to reduce carbon dioxide, which CNG does not do, from an air quality standpoint, when there's carbon dioxide in a combustion process, we say that's good because it means you have complete combustion. However, that leads to climate change, as we all know. And the way to get rid of it is to go with something like battery or hydrogen. And they're proposing hydrogen, which gives you good range, probably a lot easier to fuel than battery electric buses. So to me, it was just, when I saw that email, I just thought, this is after 5 years of trying to see them make the change. They're making the change, and I just feel great about it. I hope the rest of you will too, because if they move forward, if they get that grant and move forward, it's going to not only help climate change, it's also going to help lower ozone levels in Ventura County. Put that in perspective, when I was hired in '82, we had the 4th worst ozone in the nation, and we met that standard, the 1 hour standard, the year I retired. But we're still not attainment for the new standard. And that's probably going to be the case until the federal government comes along and does a lot of drastic things to reduce transportation emissions. And buses is a big piece of transportation emissions for both climate change and ozone. So I encourage you guys to support this letter, this request of Gold Coast to file for the grant, and let's hope that they get it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Chavez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dick, for that information. I just want to say, echoing Councilmember Baldwin's comment that hopefully for unanimous support for the letter, although it's only part of us that are being contributed to that, but I believe it's definitely a step in the right direction. Gold Coast has definitely taken a lot of steps in order to be environmentally friendly and sustainable. Many of their transmissions are completely changed over or near completely changed over to near zero emissions buses. So which means their idling is not causing as much harmful pollutants as traditional buses are. They are definitely leading when it comes to transit agencies in Ventura County taking steps to be more eco-friendly. Just recently, VCTC just announced that their bus fleet is now clean diesel. So that's great, but hydrogen, I think, is definitely one of those steps that is going to be an easy transition from CNG over to hydrogen. As Councilwoman Baldwin said, we did receive a tour, and I encourage anyone to reach out to the Gold Coast team to try to receive a tour of their new facility. It is large enough. They had the foresight to see of expansion, and this is definitely going to be able to fit without them knocking down any walls and expanding their yard. Their yard is big enough to be able to sustain the hydrogen fuel station or even the electrification. So I encourage everyone to support this. Again, it's a great effort, and it puts Ventura County on the map as being a leader. We already know that transportation is already mandated to switch over to zero emission fleet, and Gold Coast taking that lead for Ventura County sends a clear message that Ventura County is worth investing in, and that our transportation we're taking extremely serious. One of the big things that I hear a lot is about our air quality in Ventura County, and people concerns about that. And because Gold Coast operates in West Ventura County, definitely people are looking at transportation and wanting to ensure that transportation is safe to be in our neighborhoods. And again, Gold Coast is definitely taking those steps and looking at different alternative services as well. So I encourage everyone to support this proposed letter of support and to reach out to the Gold Coast team and hopefully be able to set up a tour so that you can view their facility and really invest in Gold Coast. And then, you know, since it's bike week coming up, you know, take your bike aboard Gold Coast or BCTC or Metrolink. Sorry for the cheap plug, but you know, gotta do it when I can. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you. And so any other comments from other council members? Maggie, did you want to say something? Go ahead, Councilmember Kesley.
Well, I wanted to just reiterate what was said already by Councilmember Chavez and Baldwin. I had an opportunity to tour the Gold Coast Transit District when I was with Ventura County Leadership Academy, and it was an amazing opportunity to really see what can be done. And it's impressive. It's impressive what they do. It's impressive what I got an opportunity to see. I'm fully in support of this, and I just wanted to bring something up. And well, actually, no, I'm going to wait till the next agenda item to bring up why I feel this process, the one that we're doing right now, is so effective, because we're able to maybe make a decision to approve this letter of recommendation without having to go through attack and evaluation criteria, sending it back. We have an opportunity to really act on this very quickly. And I think this was a very healthy way of looking at how maybe we can operate into the future. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the council who wants to say anything? Okay, so I do see a hand up from our public, and so Kathleen Wheeler.
Chair, before we move into public comments, I was
Sure.
hoping that we'd be able to give Gold Coast Transit District an opportunity to say something to the council and the public just to make sure that we haven't left anything out, because they're truly the ones that are doing this. It's their grant application. I wanted to potentially give them the opportunity.
Okay, great. So with us, we have Vanessa Rauschenberger, our new Gold Coast Transit Executive Director. So Vanessa, would you like to say something?
Sure, I'll say a few words and then introduce Jim Beck, who's leading the effort here as our Director of Operations and Maintenance. Just want to thank Richard and Daniel for your comments and remarks. And just to mention, this is just the first step toward this grant, if awarded, would help us make the first step in a series of many steps towards the eventual transition of our fleet to zero emissions. As Daniel mentioned, the California Air Resources Board has challenged all transit agencies in the state to transition their full fleets to zero emissions by the year 2040. We hope to get there even sooner than that, but this would go a long way to help us make that transition. As the provider of transit in Western Ventura County, we have a fleet of 61 full-size buses and 26 smaller vans. So with that fleet of about 87 vehicles, it is certainly something that is going to take many years to make that transition. And looking at this and looking at the different technology options, we feel that this opportunity through the federal grant, through the infrastructure bill that passed, an increase in funding that's going to be distributed out to cities across the country. This is Ventura County's chance to take an initial step with this project, which would be to purchase 5 hydrogen fuel cell buses and let us see how the technology works. Let us train our staff, train our mechanics, do some workforce development, make sure that we all know how to operate them and they work well for us, and really prove that the technology is good for us here and would allow us to continue that transition. So really that's, this is a project would 5 out of 87 vehicles. And then hopefully in future years, we'll be coming back to this group and coming back to the community and saying it's a successful project and we want to continue on this transition. So thank you for your consideration of this letter. Community support and organizational support is incredibly important for the application. It's a very competitive application that will be competing against transit agencies across the country. And so thank you for that. And I'll turn it over to Jim Beck, who is our Director of Operations and Maintenance. He can talk a little bit more about the project. And also with us, joining us here is Matt Miller, our Planning Manager, and he is working with Jim to actually put the application together. And Jim, turn it over to you.
Thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate that. And thank you to the council for letting us speak today. Council member Chavez and Baldwin really summed up everything pretty good along with Vanessa. We are in the middle right now of a zero emissions transition plan, which over the next 20 years, we are mandated by the California Air Resources Board to transition over our fleet. And that starts in 2026 with 25% of any vehicles having to be zero emissions. And then in 29, 100% of any vehicles purchased would have to be zero emissions. So we're about 70% through this study that Stantec is our consultant we are working with. And about a month and a half ago, they recommended hydrogen. They did a complete analysis of all our routes, and they found that hydrogen, with pointing to what Council Member Baldwin says, we have a much better range with the hydrogen vehicles, and also the workability. It's very much like the CNG we have now. The fueling times and the other aspects of the nighttime roll in and the morning rollout are very appealing to us. So that's about it as far as that goes in why we're made the choice. And we recommended that to our board of directors and they accepted our recommendation. But I'd just like to extend an invitation to anybody who wants a tour of our facility. We'd love to have you out. And also on June 1st and 2nd, we are going to have a hydrogen bus here. If anybody wants to come out, please get a hold of Vanessa or myself, and we'll arrange for a ride along for you and any of the other community. It'll be out. It'll be out on route as well for some of that time. Also, October 13th, we are having a zero emission summit here at Gold Coast Transit. We'd love for, for the Emergency Climate Council to be a part of that as well. So I'll turn it over to Matt because he's the grant guy. I'm more of the technical guy. So again, I appreciate your support and thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Madam Chair, Council. I didn't have much to add to what Jim and Vanessa and everyone else has already discussed. I'll just reemphasize that it's extremely beneficial to have letters of support from the community and from all of our partner agencies. So we really appreciate you all's consideration for this, and we hope to have a hydrogen fueling station and 5 buses in the next couple of years. So I'm pretty optimistic that we're going to get it, and it won't be because of our lack of support. So just want to say thank you.
Okay, so thank you to the team at Gold Coast. You all have been really state of the art, looking at state of the art. What do we do for our communities here? And so you've been a champion for all of this for many, many years. I know I remember serving on your board a number of years back in the day. And so we appreciate helping us move the needle and move forward on this. Thank you. Let's see, with that, I do recall that there were 2 people from the public who would like to speak. I think Kathleen Whelan, I saw your hand up, and then Don Price. So go ahead.
I was just delighted to hear what Gold Coast had to say, and Chairperson, Councilmember Baldwin and Councilmember Chavez. And I just think it's very important as we're talking about this to connect the dots with environmental justice. It's a very exciting connection. In the bigger picture, people who breathe dirty air near highways are more prone to the virus and to asthma, and 40% of goods move along those highways. And clean trucks, clean large vehicles are just one way to achieve a rapid and just transition away from fossil fuels. So I think it's important for us to talk this up and celebrate that aspect of this.
Okay, thank you very much. And then we have Don Price.
Hi there. I just wanted to point out that these emissions are actually calculable. You can figure out how much emissions will be saved by the avoidance of diesel or natural gas. So if this was in the climate action plan, it would actually count. And so that's a really good thing. I don't know if it's in the plan, but if it was, it would count. And that's what we're trying to do here, is add more emission reductions to the climate action plan. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other members from the general public who wish to speak on item number 9? All right, seeing no others, I will entertain a motion.
Travis will move staff's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Councilmember Kessler. All right, so let's go ahead and have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Ferris,
Yes.
Chair Schnapp,
Yes.
Councilmember Kessley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chavez,
Aye.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Gold Coast. And thank you for those dates that
Thank
we
you.
could put on our calendar to take a look at some of this new innovative process. Thank you. All right, so with that, then let's go ahead and go to item number 10. That is what I hadn't announced before, to take action on existing and new temporary advisory committees, and considering all of what we have to take a look at. We have reserved 45 minutes for this, and we'll start out with a presentation by County Executive Office staff. Go ahead, Clay.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I wanted to let you know that what we're doing is I wanted to go over the memo that was included in the agenda packet. I'm not going to do slides, but I'm happy to do a screen share on what exactly I'm talking about at different portions of the memo and talk about those things. County Council, I'm gonna then give County Council an option to provide any additional information, or I would really encourage County Council to just chime in if I seem to be missing anything or kind of going off script. So with that, we've got Jeff Barnes here to help me out, make sure I don't miss anything. But let me go ahead and turn on the screen share for everyone. And okay. So hopefully everyone can see this, which is a zoom in on one of the pages from the agenda packet. And this is basically the recommended actions that are found on the cover sheet associated with agenda item 10. And what we have is the way that I broke this up is there's recommended action 1, which would be for this group to dissolve the other issues temporary advisory committee. And I'll go into the rationale for that a little bit later. Then recommended action 2 is 2 parts. If no actions or proposals are anticipated in the next 2 months, to dissolve either A, the Transportation Temporary Advisory Committee, and or dissolve the Agriculture Temporary Advisory Committee. And then there was recommended action 3, which is to consider the formation of new temporary advisory committees that leverage existing knowledge or prior work efforts. So if folks have been working on things, if they've been researching things on their own, if they've been doing them as part of another effort, then those would be good things to consider for future efforts. So I wanted to go and skip down to the rationale for each of those. And I'm not going to just read these to you because I don't think that's a good use of time. But I wanted to point out, based on the discussion that we had last time, there were concerns, it seemed, that there is some continuing, I think the term that we use here is kind of basically a continuing subject area that makes some of the activities and actions taken by the other issues TAC look like a standing committee, and that is not the intent. The intent is for it to function as an ad hoc committee as defined by the Brown Act. So to ensure that we don't have a Brown Act violation in the future, I would suggest that we start from scratch, just dissolve it. And then if there are things that temporary advisory committee has brought up in the past, which seem like they merit attack in the future, then just create a new one. So just start from whole cloth so we don't have any concerns that there are things going on which are not intended and that can encroach on what we're allowed to do under the Brown Act in this council. So that was the rationale for that recommendation number 1. Now recommendation 2 is the same for transportation more or less as it is for the Agriculture Temporary Advisory Committee. And that is, those have been in effect for some time. They don't have kind of a continuing authority or anything that they've exercised, but they also haven't brought anything forward yet. And one of the things as staff that I heard from, in particular the last meeting, is that if this council thinks that these are worth continuing to have, that they're going to continue in their focus areas, and that those are focus areas this council wants to continue spending its time and effort on, then it's okay to leave them be if there's action anticipated in the near future. But if not, then there seems to be no harm in dissolving them. There's no reason that something similar or something that's been tweaked and modified so that it's more aligned with what your immediate goals are couldn't be created sometime in the future when it's ready to be addressed. But that is the rationale behind this recommended action. And it's really the same. And it's not that the Agriculture Committee, the Agriculture TAC, or the Transportation TAC haven't made a good faith effort. It's that it just hasn't happened yet. And so if we think it's going to happen soon, leave it up. If it's not going to happen soon, just dissolve it, bring it back when it's ready, if that's what your council wants to do. And then The last one, this goes into a list of various temporary advisory committees based on my role as staff and the conversations I've either had with individuals or with tax over time, things that could be considered for new areas to explore. And so I tried to combine those. And so if you'll recall, the other issues TAC has expressed an interest in exploring emissions reductions from existing buildings. The other issues TAC has also mentioned an interest in exploring emissions reductions from County of Ventura facilities. Those are fine recommendations. And if they've started on that pathway, maybe it's an appropriate thing to explore, but that's at your council's discretion. And it's at your council's discretion if a working group is needed or if an individual should explore it on their own, bring it back to the group. Additionally, that same other issues TAC mentioned low carbon building materials. There have been a couple, and this isn't just from one person, this has been from a few different people that have mentioned an interest in emissions reductions associated with landfills and waste facilities. So I wanted to place that here because there did seem to be an interest. There are a handful of people that had expressed interest in carbon farming and working lands and carbon sequestration, including one or two of the council members that I believe have enrolled in or registered for the carbon sequestration webinar series that's been created by the regional GHG collaboration group, which I'm a part of and helped organize. And then that also touches on carbon credit and offset programs, which is why that last bullet was included. The last part of this recommendation that I wanted to mention is, while we have discussed it in the past, this council is not limited to only working on this list of issues that we find in general plan program COSLL. We do have an entire set of topical areas that the board already has policies that support, and which we don't have a specific and quantifiable emissions reduction program created yet. So I wanted to bring that back to your attention, that we don't have to start from scratch every time we need an idea and need to decide where is an important place to work. There are policies that support these, and this council, if it chooses to do so, can really put some effort into any of these areas. And just the topical areas are probably not the right way to think about these. There are policies, and you can look at the policy yourselves and say, is there something tangible that could be done with the policies related to these topics that could be explored, that could be tangible, that could be quantifiable, or that could be more measurable in the way that it's implemented. So those were the areas that I wanted to highlight. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen unless County Council would like me to keep it up for some reason.
No, thanks, Clay.
Okay. So, Mr. Barnes, did you have anything in addition to the items that I talked about that you wanted to share with this council with respect to temporary advisory committees?
No, I think you covered it really well, and I'm sure everyone remembers the discussion from last time. I guess just to kind of reiterate my input before, and I feel like your council already had a pretty good handle on it, is the ad hoc committees are supposed to be temporary, supposed to explore an issue, bring back a recommendation to the council. They're not supposed to have continuing subject matter jurisdiction. And so, Clay, your recommended action is consistent with the appropriate use of ad hoc committees. And so I'd just be happy to answer any questions that come up going forward.
Okay, thank you. So let's go ahead and open it up. Clay, did you have anything else?
No, if you have clarifying questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I think that's it from me. Although I'm happy to answer questions from you all or from the public as needed.
Okay, very good. So any questions for staff from councils? Yes, Councilmember Baldwin.
Oh, excuse me. I'm not sure it's a question, comment on the proposal. When we created the other TAC, I made a reluctant support vote for it, primarily because it's supposed to be one subject per TAC. And legal reasons that are somewhat beyond my head. But the point, it brings up 2 points, and I agree with doing away with it because it sounds like it's wrong from a legal standpoint. On the other hand, one of the things that bothered me when we created the tax is it said that nobody can serve on more than one TAC. And so I'm sitting there, well, we had some choices. Well, I'll go with mobile sources because that's where I've got the most knowledge. But I have a huge interest in ag, even though I don't have a whole lot of knowledge in it, but it's something I kind of study on the side. And I'm wondering why we can't serve on more than one TAC, as long as we don't, let's say, gang up and create these ad hoc committees that would be in violation of the Brown Act. And I'll let council respond to that. Why can't we serve on more than one TAC? I have more than one interest in life when it comes to cleaning the air, personally.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'm just actually, I have 2 screens up. I'm looking at the bylaws. Clay, off the top of your head, is that rule one ad hoc membership? Is that in the bylaws?
Yes, that's something that we put in there. And I think that was out of an abundance of caution associated with making sure that we not only didn't create a Brown Act violation, but stayed far away from creating one and couldn't be interpreted as. So there wouldn't be gray area associated with that.
Right. So it's a legal requirement in that it's in the bylaws. The bylaws can be changed. But as Clay stated, that rule was implemented because of the concern of having kind of cross-pollination, having a serial meeting by members having too much going on and having discussions about the work of multiple ad hoc subcommittees. And basically you have a Brown Act serial meeting when a quorum of the council members discuss matters within your jurisdiction. And so that was a concern, and we just wanted to make sure there were no inadvertent violations by you all being on too many ad hoc committees. Another issue, and again, it's not, there's no legal prohibition on being on more than one, separate and apart from the bylaws, but just something else to think about is, the purpose of ad hoc committees is the work is supposed to get done quickly, relatively, and a recommendation is supposed to be brought back to the council. And so I think it's possible if council members were on multiple ad hoc committees, that work on all of them could be slowed down, and you could have kind of more standing committee type issues going on. So that's just something else to think about.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I see Councilmember Ferris. Go ahead.
I just want to like double down and confirm everything that Council Barnes just said. That's kind of one of the whole points. If we do not want to be having ad hoc committees where everybody's communicating about different topics outside of the public meeting, which being on one committee and being focused on an ad hoc issue is there. Also, it could very well be a motivator to where if you want to work on a different issue, get your work done on the ad hoc committee, get it to the council. So I'm all in favor of making sure that the committees work as they're intended to be working committees, getting things to the council so that we can update things. And the longer we have the ability to do it, the more we think about studying things and potentially not getting to the work. So the only thing so 100% concurrence, I support all of that understanding. The one thing I want to maybe potentially ask Clay is, were there any, because one of the things we're talking about is dissolving the other issues TAC. And so if there's any ongoing imminent work that is coming before it, I want to understand how that can get to the council within the understanding of if there's a new issue, we have the ability to have people work on it in the transition.
Sure. Well, I would say, and that is also a good question. And that was one of the reasons that I included those. If you're going to create new temporary advisory committees, you could consider these issue areas. There is, and I wanted to add to this response too, there is nothing stopping a single individual on this council from bringing forward a proposal. And I feel like that has been mentioned at a couple of different meetings, and I don't know where it came from. So I want to be very clear that if any single individual on this council wants to put forward a proposal, that's fine. They can do that. There's nothing restricting them from doing that. If members of the public want to make comments and ask the council to pick things up, that's fine. It's up to the council to take action on that if it chooses to do so. But there's nothing wrong with a temporary advisory committee as a small working group of members to bring forward an item, and there's nothing wrong with and nothing stopping a single individual from bringing those forward. So for example, in our last meeting, the other issues TAC with Councilmember White speaking on their behalf had a pair of proposals that this group reviewed. And so this council had a chance to look at those, to talk about them a little bit. He felt they weren't quite ready to come back on the agenda this time when I spoke with him about them and about the agenda, but he can still bring those exact proposals back if he's prepared to do so. If that TAC is dissolved, he would just be bringing it back as either an individual or as part of a new TAC that could be created if this council chooses to do so.
And just one follow-up before we go to someone else. I just want to double check that is the message that we end up sending to ensure that that is the intent of any work that is ongoing. I think Councilmember White's contributions have been very positive to the workings of this area, and I do not want this dissolution of the committee, while I believe operationally has kind of gotten in our way. But I don't necessarily believe it's been by intent. So I want to make sure that there's an understanding and work that he's doing, that we have the opportunity to bring it back. And if that's the way it'll happen, is the work of that would come forward by Councilmember White to the committee agendized for our consideration, then I would be supportive of that.
Okay, thank you. And then we have Vice Chair Chavez. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to briefly say that when we're looking at these TAC meetings, we had county council at our last meeting talked about, some information in regards to Brown Acts, how our TACs operate. We understand that there's supposed to be a limited scope, limited time, not standing committees. One of the questions that I had asked was, well, how long is limited? Is it a couple of months? Is it more than 6 months? Is it a year? What is considered limited? Well, the law doesn't actually outline what is limited. So when you think about it in those terms, none of our TACs are considered standing committees. We can all say that they're limited TACs because there's no time frame for them. The issue that I had, and I've had it already from the beginning, was being transparent and allowing buy-in from the public. And that was one of the reasons why I felt that our meetings, when we had these TACs, that they become public, that they are noticed to the public so that the public can participate, because of the fact that we do know that there are many members on this call today and on previous calls that have knowledge in certain areas that could be helpful. I do believe that our TACs have gotten a little out of hand operationally. And I will reiterate the comment that I made last time, was we have a Councilmember Baldwin, on his own, decided to take an idea and work with another Councilmember Ferris, and work with county staff, Clay, in order to build it up and present it. So I believe, in my opinion, and even, and I don't want to speak for Councilmember White, but I believe he did make the comment that he's okay with the TACs being dissolved. Again, I'm okay with TACs being dissolved if that means that we're able to come and bring the information that, say there's a particular area that I want to focus on, that I can bring it back and present. And it sounds like there is nothing preventing me from doing that. There is nothing preventing me from working with the council member, as long as it doesn't reach that threshold of a quorum. So I'm okay with dissolving all the tax and just having council members work on their own to bring items forward. I believe it's healthy when we have that discussion as a whole and that we're able to essentially use our meetings to suggest ideas without actually diving too much into it. That is my opinion, and that's how I believe our council can be as effective as possible. I don't believe we've been effective enough or efficient enough with the tax. I believe I feel like we kind of wasted a lot of time having tax, that we could have done a lot more or accomplished a lot more. Again, we know it works when individual council members bring their own items forward. Councilmember Baldwin, I don't know how long it took you for that education plan. Maybe you can share that, how long it took you, but it's doable. And I believe that we can do that on our own. So I would be fully in support of dissolving all the tax and allowing council members to have free range to be able to work on any items that they want. We know Councilmember Kesley talked about that she visited the landfill or landfill. So that's knowledge that she's gaining on her own, that she may want to bring something forward. But because of the tax, it prevented her because of the fact of not meeting that quorum. So those are my comments. And again, I would support dissolving all the tax and allowing council members to be effective and efficient as possible. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I see Councilmember Baldwin and then Councilmember Kesley.
So I'm not muted. Okay. So with respect to dissolving the transportation tax, to be perfectly honest, when we created it, the one thing that was in my brain about transportation, reducing transportation emissions, was trying to figure out how to get Gold Coast at the starting line with the flag coming down and saying go, to go to either battery electric buses or hydrogen, to zero emission bus, which they've done. And so I could have done, I tried to do that on my own and I didn't get anywhere, but they reached their point, and it was good to have Daniel around, and I thought we would be able to work on it more, except I took off on a 2-month vacation and maybe I shouldn't have, but I'm back. And so if we want to dissolve it, that's fine. I'm wondering, Daniel said we could just take things on our own. Well, I'll partially reveal a secret that I'm working on another one by myself. And do we want to form a TAC to help me? I don't know. I think I can do it on my own. I don't know if I want to reveal it though, because I'm going to sneak up on the county. So I'll just bring it here, my friends. And but why can't we, when we see something, work as a pair? Do we, this is for county council. When it comes to transportation, when we're looking at the engine, I've got knowledge. And when we're looking at the source, Daniel's got knowledge. And why can't we work together? Why do we have to be attacked? Why can't we just say, I've got interest, let's put some time in on it and see where we can get this thing going? Do you have to form a TAC to work together? I honestly don't know the answer to that, but I can see times where working together is helpful, and in my case, I have enough knowledge in some subjects to just work alone. I don't know where to go on that.
Yeah.
With respect to eliminating them or saying, well, you can have teams, or work just teamwork. I'm used to working teamwork.
Yeah, that's a good question. So you don't know, and I think Daniel basically said this, and he's correct. You don't need a TAC to work with a team on something. The idea was, if you're going to have so let me back up. So the Brown Act, that we keep coming back to the main concern, it's a a serial meeting, getting a quorum of the council members involved in an issue that's brought forward. That cannot happen. And so the idea with the tax was to kind of formalize the team process and make sure that serial meetings didn't happen. And so that's not to say you cannot team up with another member or two. You can, but you just always have to have the serial meeting issue on your radar, and make sure you don't get to the quorum number, through that process. So, that's a long way of saying, though, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you teaming up with one or two other people, or more. Just be really careful about getting to a quorum.
Oh. All right. So when we created, excuse me, when we created the tax, I guess I misunderstood our ability to work as a teammate with somebody. But it sounds like it's perfectly legal as long as we don't get over a quorum. The quorum, I'm assuming, is based on how many members are on the council. Right now we have 8, so a quorum would be no more than 4. Can't go over 4 because we have 8 members.
Yeah, a quorum, it's actually 5. It's half plus 1. But right, but then you also have to keep in mind the cross-pollination issue you mentioned earlier. If you're on multiple teams, there's a higher risk of someone on your team talking to another team or another TAC, if any TACs exist, about the same issue. So always be cognizant of those issues.
Huh. It's like we can't trust each other or something when if the cross-pollination thing, like if I was working on transportation and then I went over and worked on ag, even though nobody else in ag was working on transportation, no one else in transportation is working on ag, I might be over there talking about business that I shouldn't be talking about or something.
No, I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. Just and there's no problem. Like you said, just it's something to keep in mind.
Okay.
It's not that I don't trust you. I'm just telling you what the what the rules are, and just just be mindful.
Okay, so let's go ahead. Councilmember Baldwin, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, probably, but I can't verbalize them right now. My head's spinning, trying to figure out which way to go on this thing.
Don't worry, we'll come back to you if you have anything else. Go ahead, Councilmember Kessley.
So listening to all of the great discussion, and I appreciate everybody's input, I have to keep going back to, why do we need the tax? What real purpose are they serving except to get in our own way? Every time we turn around, we're talking about tax as opposed to talking about programs and policy. And I love Councilmember Baldwin's idea of teams. Get away from the tax, because then you kind of get away from the Brown Act issue. And if Councilmember Baldwin's working on a project and he knows that, oh, Councilmember Kessley has expertise in that area, he can go directly to me and say, can you help me with this? Or if we need to pull in Councilmember White, we can. It seems like way more efficient and effective way to bring programs and policies to this council. Not to mention, I might have speakers, Councilmember Baldwin might have speakers, people that could actually educate this whole council so that when we are ready to make a vote, we are fully informed and we can back it without having to say, did the one TAC meet all of this criteria? And if they didn't, okay, we got to send you back so you can work on bringing more of it back to us. And okay, is that going to be enough? When our whole council has the ability to say, we don't really need all that information like we did today, and approve something, and we're already sending a letter of recommendation for something amazing to happen. So my feeling would be, why do we have to have tax? Is that necessary? That's my question.
Okay.
Councilmember Kessley, were you hoping for a response from council member or from the county council or myself?
Either one.
Sure. This council is absolutely not required to have temporary advisory committees. The only caution I would have is if you work in teams, if you recall from some of the slides that were shown in this council's training that was conducted back in March of 2021, there's a concern about daisy chain serial meetings, and there's a concern about hub and spoke serial meetings. So we can't have, for example, and I'm going to use Councilmember Baldwin because he talked about teams. When he views a team, he can't choose to meet with Vice Chair Chavez and then meet with you, Councilmember Kessley, and then meet with Councilmember Ferris, and then meet with then meet with Chair Schnapp, because that would be a hub and spoke meeting. And in turn, he can't have a one-on-one meeting with Vice Chair Chavez and then Vice Chair Chavez turn to you, Councilmember Kessley, and meet with you and say, would you mind meeting with Councilmember Ferris? And then Councilmember Ferris in turn turns to Chair Schnapp and says, hey, I want to run an idea by you. So those are the sorts of things that we want to make sure that it's okay if there's collaboration on a limited basis, but we need to make sure there's not a violation of the Brown Act. But the TACs are not required to conduct work.
So clarification, if it's a specific topic and you stick to that specific topic, is that then a daisy chain violation? If we're talking to multiple team members to get the information we need on a particular topic.
County Council, did you want to respond? I saw you shake your head or do something, but I didn't know if it was relevant.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, even if it's a single topic, if you're if there's any deliberation or back and forth with a quorum about the topic, then there's a potential Brown Act violation. I mean, I think you could argue if it's a one-way communication where you're just soliciting specific information from someone without floating ideas or doing any deliberating, then there's definitely an argument, and I think it would be a very reasonable argument that, hey, no, that's not a serial meeting. I'm just asking for a specific piece of information. We haven't gotten to the quorum yet. So it would really depend on what the communication looks like. But again, I guess it's just something to keep in mind, but I don't want to, I feel like it would be a shame if the work of the council is unduly inhibited out of fear for having a serial meeting just based on asking a question for some piece of information. So I hope that helps.
Councilmember Kessley, did you have anything further?
It just seems that it would be very effective to have a particular program or policy brought to the full council and have the full council participating in those discussions, listening to the speakers and making a decision right then and there on whether or not it has what is required to send it off to the Board of Supervisors. I just see much more efficiency in that process. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And Councilmember Ferris.
Thank you. The main thing out of this whole thing, it doesn't matter whether you call it a team or a TAC or anything else. It's about how any of us decide to get together outside the council meeting to talk about a specific area and bring a proposal to the council. If it turns out you start to include a majority of people, that's a problem. And that's the whole point. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a TAC or if you have phone calls. Two people want to get together and discuss how to do some work together. Fantastic. Nothing's stopping you. Nothing's ever stopped anyone on this council. But what they have stopped is the aggregation of a majority of the people on the council getting together to talk about a particular topic outside of a fully noticed and publicly available meeting. That's what it's always been. The problem with operationally why the other issues TAC was there is that they had pretty close to a majority, and then they talked about a particular topic. They brought it up for discussion, started including other people into that discussion, which then precluded anybody else beyond a majority to actually be part of it, which was operationally going to get in the way of actually bringing anything to the council or including people that are interested in it. So if we just focus on having people focus on areas that they want to do some research and bring it back, they still should do the work to do the evaluation criteria. That was the whole point of it, is to say, base your recommendations on real information. so that we can say, yes, we think it'll actually be effective. Yes, we think it's actually doable. It doesn't matter if one person brings it up or an officially recognized TAC brings it up. If they don't do the homework, they're going to get sent back. That's the first thing I'm going to probably ask for. So to me, I don't care. What the TACs do is it allows us to be able to say, this is something to where we know there's some people interested in it. Let's create that TAC, have them go and run some meetings and do some work together and then bring it back. And if we use it in that way, it should be fine for us. But I don't think, say, not having tax, but somehow that gives us a lot more freedom to make things more efficient, but not do the same amount of work. The fact is, the work we have here is Councilmember Baldwin's brought forward a recommendation. Councilmember White has brought a few recommendations, and we've voted on them. We've asked him to do more work on it. That's all we've had to date. So there just needs to be more work. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Baldwin.
So looking at the teamwork thing, as Councilmember Ferris noted, I brought something forth and then we worked with them. So I worked with them. And I'm thinking about my next project. And I've reached a point where now that I'm back in Ventura, I can actually start working on it. Working as a team, using the team concept in my mind, given my past experience, why wouldn't it be appropriate to, after I put a proposal together and I get to the bean counting stage, go to Councilmember Ferris and say, I got this proposal, look at it. What am I missing in terms of figuring out what the reductions are, all the things that he thinks about?
Okay, I
mean, that's
knew this was
teamwork.
trouble.
That's
Just
teamwork.
bring it up because he was going to recruit me. Okay.
Yeah, to me, that's teamwork. It isn't like two people work together, three people work together offsite for the whole idea. I'm working on the technical thing, but I could use the help of somebody else, probably, to get input. So is that violating the Brown Act when I say, hey, how about looking at this? To me, it's not, but I'm real goosey because it's not a TAC. And so I get nervous about which way to go here, you know. I just want to bring the proposal together and reduce emissions.
Chair Schnapp?
Yes, go ahead. Councilmember.
It's okay if I respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it might take that is not, there's no prohibition there unless you have already gone and talked to nearly a majority of the council members to aggregate your information in order to do it. And no matter what, we all have an obligation to make sure that we don't do that. So if you feel comfortable that you've done that, you've worked with Clay and we've gotten some information here, but you need an additional person or two to be able to bounce some things off of. One, you could bring it to the council just to let everybody know. And we can say, great, go for it. That way we all know we're not gonna, please don't confer with Councilmember Baldwin on this topic at risk of Brown Act violation things, except for these people. Or just make sure that the people you're working with, we haven't broached the majority problem. I think that's a workable thing. But there's also maybe a discussion point that we have at the council level to say, this is a topic that there's three people that once they've heard of it, they actually really have something they want to be involved in. Let's create a TAC on that item, have them go and do the work and come back. So I feel like those are both options.
Yeah. And it's the understanding of, each of the, no matter which direction, is that everybody who's involved is like, you can't get past that magic number and you can't violate in other ways of sharing the information that you all are covering. Go ahead, Vice Chair Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say real quick, Councilmember Ferris brought up a good point in regards to bringing items to the full council. And the first thing that I thought about, well, say I keep using Councilmember Baldwin because he's already proven that it does work when you work with the council member and county staff, that you can bring a proposal forward. And I believe if we keep it in that sense, not necessarily saying that we need to have a tag. Unfortunately, there's only one Councilmember Ferris. He can't be in everyone's working group. Although I'm sure he can carve up some time, right?
So I'm hearing that that I'm going to become the clearinghouse tack. Is that?
But bean counting.
But I'm the way that I'm thinking about it is that in order to keep everyone on the right and narrow, that we don't create Brown Act violations, is that we're being cautious of who we're speaking with. And that when we want to get additional feedback or buy-in from other council members, that one council member brings it to the full council, put it on the agenda, and then allow everyone to have it, because it's already published, it's noticed, it's there, everyone has a buy-in, and it doesn't create any Brown Act violation. Then that council member can go back and continue to work with, that's the way I'm seeing it. So I think if we not necessarily create a tag for it, but that we use a process similar like that. I'm thinking about, and each one of us have served with staff or been staff, that staff presents something to the whole board. We have our comments, staff leaves, they go make the changes or additions or gather more information, then they come back later on. And I'm thinking that should be our process, is that when we feel like, okay, I need additional buy-in or additional information or feedback from council members, I need to speak with Clay, get it on the agenda. So again,
More like a study session almost, huh?
almost like a study session, but it's for the entire council. It's
Right.
the
Well,
buy-in,
that's what it
getting
would be, right?
you know, getting that feedback. But it also, again, it allows the public the opportunity, because we may be missing something. Council member isn't strong in one particular area. So again, I don't think it requires us to have tax, and I understand completely 100% what Councilmember Ferris is saying, that tax, no tax, it doesn't make a difference. We still have to follow the Brown Act, and it's our own responsibility. And I believe we've all served on commissions and councils and boards and been in the staff roles, that we understand the Brown Act, and that if we have any questions, we go to Clay or our county council before we actually act on it. So again, my recommendation will continue to be that we dissolve all the tax, and that we just do working groups. And when we're ready to present or get additional members to buy in, that we get it on the agenda, and that we have a full-on discussion with the council. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. So anything else from the group here? So I'd like to say I love this healthy discussion, you know, because it's just really identifying the best of what we could bring to this council, as well as to incorporate those issues that are really important to us and or that are part of what we've done, like, you know, with Councilmember Baldwin, this is what we've done. And so it's sharing those best practices so that we can move forward. And I appreciate everybody really delving in and giving your feedback on here, because it's really important for us to work as a team, but also then to know that we abide by some of these other rules that we always have to keep in mind. So I appreciate all of that. So at this point, then let's go ahead and were there any other questions for county staff with regards to what was mentioned in the document for this item? Nothing else? Okay. All right. So let's go into then public comments. Anybody from the public who wishes to speak on this item, you can go ahead and raise your hand and or take yourself off of mute. All right, I'm not seeing anyone that wishes to speak on this item. So let's go ahead and entertain a motion. What would you like to do?
Madam Chair, I will move for a dissolve of all the tax effective essentially immediately, or at least at our next meeting. Thank you.
I'll second that.
So there's a motion and a second. Clay, would you do us the favor of doing the roll call, please?
You see that Councilmember Baldwin had his hand up there for a
Oh, I'm
moment.
sorry. I didn't see that. Sorry about that. Councilmember Baldwin?
Councilmember Chavez made a two-part motion. Are we going to abolish it now or effective the next meeting? We can't vote for both of those things because they're two things.
Correct.
So-
I
Make up your mind.
Right? Quit throwing too many options. Let me revise it. My motion would be to dissolve all of the tax effective immediately. Thank you.
Okay, and is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All right. So then, thank you for that clarification. So, oh, yes, Councilmember Ferris.
And only with the clarification that any ongoing work for the other issues tax or the tax can be brought to the council by individual council members. And that is with that understanding.
That is understood. And I would say that the opinion from staff is that does not need to be in the motion because it just is. That those efforts, they exist. And I think that clarification though is fine, but that is a mutual understanding.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. So we have a motion and a second. So go ahead with the roll call, please. Councilmember
Ferris.
Yes.
Chair Schnapp.
Yes.
Councilmember Kessley.
Yes.
Vice Chair Chavez.
Aye.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, great. Thank you. And so let's go ahead and then roll into item number 11, which is council member comments and future agenda items. So are there any comments here from the council? So I see Vice Chair Chavez, you have a hand up. Go ahead.
Just real quick, Madam Chair, and I appreciate it. I just want to echo your comments earlier in regards to the healthy discussion. I believe this is what makes us very efficient and effective when we are open and intentionally listening. Because I think we all heard what we were saying and that we all respected what we were saying. And I can see great things coming from this council moving forward. And that, again, if we have any questions, we have to be able to rely on our county staff. We have Clay, who's always available. You can call him at 2 a.m., right, in the morning?
You can call.
Well, maybe not.
I'm not going to answer, but you can call. But no, I'm happy to assist to the extent possible, council members.
And then we also have county council that's available. So if we ever feel like we're unsure or confused about something, that we rely on those two individuals to be able to guide us in the appropriate way. I believe this is going to make our council a lot better, and that we're allowing the public to have more of a buy-in this way moving forward. So I appreciate the healthy discussion, and I appreciate everyone's time, because it definitely is time that we're all investing for the betterment of our county. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Kessley.
And I have a recommendation. Mick, we need to make you staff so that we can just call upon you to help all of us, period.
So I already have a job, but but to the extent I can help out, obviously I want to help out and make what we're doing for the county easier and better.
Thank you, Mick, truly.
Great, thank you. Thanks. Anyone else? Yeah, and so you know, yes, go ahead, Clay.
I wanted to, the planning division heard the discussion and was kind enough to send me additional information about the planning commission hearing. So rather than you all waiting for an email from me, I thought I could go ahead and tell you that planning commission hearings are currently being conducted hybrid. So they're live in the hearing room here at the government center, and they're also available through Zoom. The staff reports are available either, depending on the given week, on the Thursday or Friday prior to their Tuesday meetings. And then additionally, staff confirmed that as of today, the Climate Emergency Council items for June 16th are still the only ones scheduled to be on the agenda for that day.
Okay. And was that June 16th or July 16th?
It's June.
June, okay.
If I said July, I apologize. It is not in July. It is on June 16th.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. All right, and so, you know, the only other comments I had was from the TAC, which no longer then exists. You might see coming up in the future on our agenda something with regards to agriculture. We have a great resource in our county known as AgriMen, and just identifying that there could be a need to get organic back into our soils. And so with that, just, you know, stay tuned for what possibly I or Keith could be bringing back to you. All right, any comments from the public for item number 11, which is council member comments and future agenda items? All right, I don't see any hands up then. So we will, if there is anything else for the good of the meeting. All right. So with that, then we are adjourned, and we will be meeting then in June. I believe the next meeting is.
Next meeting is scheduled for June 14th.
14th, yeah. So it's right before then the planning commission meets. So
That's right.
we'll catch everybody June 14th. So enjoy these graduations and enjoy your Memorial Day weekend, and we'll see you in June. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Great day.
Thanks.